Yeah. I keep it low key.
Welcome to
I
Chat
keep
with
it low
Chief
key.
Transformational Leadership Series, hosted by Backpack Technologies, and I'm your host, Jason Blair from Backpack Technologies. Today's guest is no stranger to the spotlight, a retired Chief Warrant Officer 5 and former CTO of the Army under the Army G6. Man, I'm glad to introduce the COO/CRO of Inspired Solutions, CW5 retired RIP Pina. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Doing great, Jason. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you coming on and, taking a moment to, share your story with us. So you've been a CW5 in the Army, which congratulations to that. You're a pastor, a vice president. You've been a vice president, right? And you've been a CTO of a major integrator for the Army, and now you're the COO/CRO of Inspired Solutions. Man, that's a whole lot. There was a whole lot researching it, so I'm a little flabbergasted on how you even have the time and bandwidth to do all that. But can you, briefly tell us about yourself and your incredible journey?
Yeah, I'm just a Dominican kid from Brooklyn. That's it. And whatever I am by the grace of God. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I don't get caught up in titles or positions. I just seek to attempt to do whatever it is that God has led me to do and to be able to glorify God in everything that I do. And so my story really starts with my mother. My mother immigrated to the United States in 1970. She and my father. And I was born in 72. And when I was born, my mother didn't have her papers yet. So, she was just on a travel visa. So as soon as I was born in the U.S., so that made me the first American in my family, the first of my family born in the U.S. But then my mom had to go back to the Dominican Republic, and they told her, well, your boy's American, so he could stay here, but you got to go. And she was like, you must be crazy. So she took me with her. And so I spent almost my first 3 years of my life in the Dominican Republic. And then when she got her papers, she was legal. She came back when I was 3. She came back to the United States and then really kind of started that journey. But by then, because she and my father were separated all that time, the marriage dissolved, they got a divorce. And so she raised me as a single parent in East New York, Brooklyn. I don't know if you know anything about Brooklyn, but East New York, Brooklyn, in the late 70s and early 80s was the murder capital of the United States. So it was terrible. But by the grace of God, I made it out of that. I joined the Army when I was 17. I picked, for those folks that are watching that are not old enough to realize that there was a time before the internet. In 1990, there was no internet. So in 1990, we were doing voice communication. So I was a voice communications engineer or a network engineer, but from a voice perspective. I started doing voice routing, and in 92, we started doing data with like X.25 circuits and stuff like that. To give you some context, 1992, I paid like $200 for a modem, a dial-up modem, that was giving me a whopping 14.4 kilobits per second, right? And so, and back then, 1993, 94, I paid like $550 for a CD-ROM drive. Just the drive that could read a CD-ROM cost $500. Just to give people some context of, where technology was at that time. So anyway, I was one of the first soldiers to work on Cisco routers and switches in the Army. So this was 1996. I actually was the first DMS platoon leader for the Army. So I was doing tactical TMS, or TMS was tactical DMS, defense messaging service. So we were the first ones doing email in the field. We were the first ones doing PKI in the field. This was at Fort Hood. And then I deployed with 1st Cav and went down to Bosnia, came back. Long story short, I had every job in the Army that I could have. I had some pretty cool jobs. And I spent my last 5 years in the Pentagon, and I wound up being the Army's first CTO. I retired from the Army in 2015. My wife and I retired on the same day. I went to a company called Worldwide Technology. I held multiple positions there, from DoD to then federal to then public sector and all of that. I was the vice president of consulting for public sector. And I also led the global Hispanic Latinx employee resource group. And the whole time my wife was started a company, was growing the company as a small business. And last year in 2023, She grew the business to the point where she needed my help. So the Lord impressed it upon my heart to leave Worldwide Technology, who I still love and I work with them every day. I will always be a soldier and I'll always be part of the Worldwide Technology family. And then I joined Inspired Solutions last year. So I'm helping my wife run the business, and we're in a field where, we see all the same people. We're just doing it from a small business perspective. That tells you a little bit about my story. I didn't mention the ministry. Let me just mention that, and then we'll open it up for whatever questions you have. So I've been preaching for almost 30 years. So the whole time I was in the Army and everything, going through everything that I just went through, at the same time, I was preaching the gospel. And the Lord impressed it upon my heart when I was a W1 in HHC 57 Signal Battalion, Fort Hood, Texas. I started a daily devotional in December of 1997 called Today's Word. The Lord told me in 97, put my word in people's email inbox and start your day with me. And so I started doing Today's Word 5 days a week in December 1997. And here we are 26 years later, and I'm still doing it. And in 2010, we started doing a video version of it. So there's over 3,000 video episodes on the podcast. We have over 3,000 podcast episodes just on the video version. I have well over 10,000 of the email version that has gone out. And people have been receiving Today's Word for a long time. Along the way, I pastored the gospel service while I was deployed in Bosnia. I pastored the gospel service while I was deployed in Iraq because I've been ordained the whole time. And so I've been in ministry the whole time. And then in 2007, my wife and I have been doing ministry for many years with our own money, and we never really opened it up to take donations. So we started a nonprofit, a 501c3, in 2007, Rick and Isabella Pina Ministries. And we then started receiving donations so that we could do more work. She's been all over the globe. She's been to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Haiti, Mexico, the Dominican Republic. And in 2015, when we retired, we started a school in the Dominican Republic with 50 students. Now it's up to 220 students. We bought land. We built the school. We built the church. Everything is paid off debt free. And thankfully, we have 220 children, Haitian children, who are the children of undocumented aliens in the Dominican Republic. And we provide them a Christ-based education from ages 3 to 9th grade and a hot meal every day. And we have 17 staff members, and we also have a church there. So we're a little bit busy. Obviously, we have children. We have soccer practice. We have all of that stuff we got to deal with as well. But by the grace of God, we are who we are.
Man, that's crazy. We could probably do a whole podcast or episode just on talking about the nonprofit and stuff. I follow you on Facebook, and I see some of your words, and they're really good. And also some of the things you're doing with the nonprofit. So, hey, good stuff, Chief. Rick, my bad. It's a whole old habit, but let's transition into why we're here, right? To talk about, and thanks for letting us into a little bit of your life, right? So that's always great. I learned some things just right now that I didn't know about you, right? So, let's talk about the crime capital of the world back then, right? So that's why, Gotham City is kind of, New York is an inspiration for Gotham City, not the New York now, but the New York, back in the 80s, right? So I remember that. And then shortly after Chicago, my hometown, kind of took it over, but it's all good. Hey, so in your own words, right? What's a transformative leader? What is transformative leadership to you? And also, you were speaking on how you've been doing pastoring for like over 30 years. So that means you're also a servant leader. So what is a transformational leader in your own words? And also, what is a servant leader in your own words? And what are some of the differences and similarities? I know that's a lot, but I think you can handle it.
Yeah, for sure. So I ascribe to servant leadership. Mm-hmm. Because you're doing a series on transformational or transformative leadership, obviously you asked me to talk about that. So transformative leadership or transformational leadership, and I've seen both terms used synonymous, from what I understand, is basically inspirational leadership. Leadership where you are inspiring your team to go to the next level and maybe even seeing something in them that they don't see in themselves. But then transformational leadership or transformative leadership also involves you as a leader transforming in the process. There's not a lot of differences between that and servant leadership. But let me explain why I ascribe to servant leadership. You and I were in the Army. The Army definition of leadership is the ability to influence others into the accomplishment of the mission while providing them with purpose, direction, and motivation. And to me, that connotes I'm in charge and you're not. You know, I say jump, you say how high. I say run, you say how far, right? And so you're going to do whatever I tell you to do. The definition of leadership that I use is one that I got from a gentleman named Dr. Ted Ward. Years ago in Bible college, this was around the year 2000, I was reading a book by Dr. Warren W. Wiersbe. The title of the book is On Being a Servant of God. And in the book, Wiersbe quotes Ted Ward. And Ted Ward said, leadership is a servant relationship which facilitates human development. So from that moment, that's been the definition of leadership that I use. I'm a servant leader. I'm here to serve. So anyone that I'm leading, I'm actually serving them. You're not serving me. I'm serving you. Now, in a way, yes, transformational leadership or transformative leadership and servant leadership are aligned in that regard. But the part about me focusing on leadership so I could change, as a servant leader, I'm not worried about that. As a servant leader, I'm just serving you. And then I'm going to be all right. I will be blessed in the process as I go through it. But my focus is you and not me. And that's what servant leadership is to me. I hope that kind of makes sense as far as, definitions.
Okay. So while you was in, right, have you had the opportunity, right, and to work with or observe these type of this type of leadership while you was in the military, while you was in army?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in my life, and I'm sure that we'll talk about different spaces and everything. But obviously, I have the military, and then I have the marketplace, and then I have ministry, right? And so these are kind of distinct, separate, but there's some similarities between those spaces as well. But from a military perspective, I will name 4 key leaders that have impacted my life in a significant way. One is now Lieutenant General John Morrison. So Morrison was my very first company commander. When I showed up to Germany, I was just turned 18 years old, Bravo Company, 1st Signal Battalion. I got there on March 5th, 1991. And I was assigned to Bravo Company. Bravo Company was still in Saudi because they were trying to come back from Desert Storm. So I got there the day that Delta Company, 1st Signal Battalion got back, but Bravo Company wasn't back yet. So when Bravo Company came back, then Captain John Morrison met me, and he lined up all the 36 Limas. I was at 36 Lima. And, he talked to us about the importance of our role, our job in running the switch. We had a 39 Alpha at the time. And for whatever reason, I was assigned to be the guidon bearer. So obviously I was running right next to him in all the runs. And we had a fun run every Friday, and I didn't think it was that fun. But as his guidon bearer, whenever we went to events like the change of command for 7th Signal Brigade or something like that, I wound up, he would drive and I would be in the bus with all the other soldiers, and he would give me his 45. And then of course, back then it was a 45, not a 9mm. And of course I'm carrying the guidon. So I had my weapon, his weapon, and all that. So I kind of got to interact with him, and for whatever reason, he took a liking to me. So from that day, from the day I met him to now, he's been investing in my life 100%. Fast forward, I got to Bragg. Not Bragg. I met Morrison, was at Bragg as well. When later I got to Bragg, he was there too. But when I got to Hood in 97, I met Les Cornwall. And Les was a W2, I was a W1. But it was obvious that he was like light years ahead of all the other warrant officers. And so Les and I, from 97 to this day, he's been investing in my life, never stopped. In 99, Bob Farrell, General Farrell, took over. He was Lieutenant Colonel, took over 13th Signal Battalion, and I met him in Bosnia. And I met him. He was my battalion commander, but remember, I was the pastor of the gospel service too. So he came to our church. So he was my boss, but I was his pastor. And we built a relationship and a bond in 99, and we've been friends ever since. And then when I got back, General Vi took over 3rd Signal Brigade from General Pollard. And so Vi was a colonel at the time. I had met Vi before, but then I really got to know him at 3rd Signal Brigade, and we built a bond. So those are the 4 people that have been servant leaders for me. All 4 of those people have gone out of their way to do things for me without asking me to do anything in return. And of course, I've always repaid it. I feel like I try to repay it 1,000-fold, but they've never been that way. They've always been doing things for me, looking out for me, pouring into my life, seeing things in me that I didn't see in myself, opening doors for me that no man can close. And they have been doing that, and they continue to do that to this day.
So, as we get out, you transitioned into, started working for Worldwide Technologies, or Technology. I always put the S on it. But so when you did that, you had your mentors in the military, right? And you've seen this leadership in the military. What about in the civilian workforce? How did you observe that? Do you have some people that you look up to, that's transformational?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So when I was getting out, actually the last meeting that General Farrell and I did in uniform, well, yeah, that we did together, right? Because he retired 2 years after me. So the last meeting I did in uniform, the last TDY I went on was to go visit Worldwide Technology. And when I went to go visit Worldwide Technology, I got to meet Dave Stewart. And so Dave Stewart is an exceptional leader. He gave me a book at the time when I met him that he wrote, is actually behind me, called Doing Business by the Good Book. And it's like 52 business lessons from the Bible. And then later he wrote Leadership by the Good Book as well. So I got that book, I read the book, I got to meet Dave. And from that day to this day, Dave and I I would say we're close. And he's a tremendous mentor. I glean a lot from him. He'll say he gleans some things from me from a Bible perspective, but I definitely gleaned a great deal from him. The guy that hired me at WWT, his name was Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas and I got close. Brian Thomas is now the senior vice president of public sector at Pure Storage. But Brian and I traveled a lot. I learned a lot from Brian. I spent a lot of time with Brian. He taught me business. I had an MBA when I retired, but he taught me business on another level, really getting to know the business and knowing the numbers. I'm going to name a couple of more people from WWT. Scott Gagnon taught me a great deal. He's currently the senior vice president of federal at WWT. Joe Koenig, who's the president of WWT. Joe knows his numbers inside and out. Oh my God, I don't know how he remembers all these numbers, but Joe can tell you where every sales team is across the company and where everybody is, who's meeting their number, who's not, who's above, and he can just quote all these numbers. He taught me a lot about business. And then lastly, Jim Cavanaugh. Jim Cavanaugh, who is the co-founder and CEO of Worldwide Technology. Jim and I got to sit on panels with Jim and interview him and spend time with him and be on calls with him and travel with him and actually take him to see senior leaders and spend some time. I've gleaned a lot from Jim. But yeah, there's some tremendous leaders that I've been exposed to. I'm very thankful.
Ministry. Well, any transformational leaders that you've met? Because I watch a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, I was listening to a preacher. I cannot remember his name for the life of me. I met him once. I seen him, and I actually seen your book in one of the churches down here. I can't remember if I sent you a picture of it, but I was like, wow, this is incredible. I was like, I know that guy, But anyway, I digress. So what about ministry? Who would you say you've seen that impacted your life like that?
I got to mention a few people on the ministry side as well, right? So I got born again in Kuwait in 385th Signal Company, 54th Signal Battalion. And this was I got born again August 27, 1995. The guy that I was a staff sergeant in the United States Army, 36 Lima, getting my warrant officer packet together. I had been in the Army. I just turned 23 years old, and I had been in the Army. I just hit the 5-year mark. And so I got promoted to staff sergeant at the 4-year, 11-month mark. And then I got to Kuwait. I was still 22 when I got there. I met another staff sergeant in my unit. His name was Leo Jacobs, but we were not the same. Look, I'm a Dominican kid from Brooklyn. I was cursing every third word. I had no vocabulary. I was real crass. I was from Brooklyn. I let everybody know it. I wanted to fight everybody. I was real kind of brash and rude and all of that. And Leo Jacobs was the opposite. He was refined and polished and had a vocabulary. And the Lord led me to Jesus because of Leo Jacobs. Later, when I left Kuwait, I got to Fort Gordon, Georgia. and there was a master sergeant, previous first sergeant, but he was a master sergeant at the time. And he was about to retire. He had started a church. His name was Richard Peoples, and he's Bishop Peoples now. And that man, I can tell you, like the greatest impact in ministry that anybody has ever had on my life is Richard Peoples. He took me, I was young, I was bold, I was brash, I was full of pride. I was called, but I was kind of rough around the edges. And he spent time with me. He pastors Faith Outreach Church of Augusta, one church in 2 locations. And he spent a lot of time. I would not be the man that I am today without Richard Peoples, for sure. Then later, I was in Texas, and Pastor S.L. Moulton poured into my life a great deal. And then lastly, where I'm at right now, my spiritual father right now, that I believe, submitted to for the rest of my life, is a man named Tony Brazelton. And I'm on the board of ECMI, and we are one church in 9 locations, and we have 9 locations in this area and 1 overseas. I learned a lot from Pastor Tony as my spiritual father. I spend a lot of time with him whenever I can, but I'm gleaning a lot. And I've learned a lot about ministry, about leadership, about how to lead like Jesus led from Pastor Tony as well. So no, I've been tremendously blessed. I've been exposed to a lot of other leaders, like people that you see on television and all that. I've been in the room with a lot of these people, but I'm saying these are the people that directly impacted my life.
Okay. So so Richard Peoples, Mr. Peoples, Pastor Peoples, but was he the most impactful person for leadership that you've ever met, and why? If not him, and it's no slight to anybody that you named, I know some of the people that you mentioned, and I will say that the ones I do know, they are tremendous leaders. But who is the most impactful out of all of them when we talk about civilian, ministry and military?
Yeah, Bishop Richard B. Peoples Sr., right? And it's not because I'm going to say he is a greater leader than any of these other people. Yeah. So John Morrison or General Morrison, between the both of them, I guess, Morrison had the greatest impact because I met him when I was 18 years old, and I didn't have a relationship with my father. And so I didn't know that I needed like a male figure in my life. There was things that I was lacking that I didn't even know I was lacking that I got from Morrison that created a bond that is still strong to this day. But then Peoples, because he's the one that invested in me the most, meaning that he caught me at a time, not that he's a greater leader than everybody else, but I was the most messed up when I met him. Meaning, so when I met him, I was at a stage in my life where I was like the clay on the potter's wheel, and it was marred. And the Bible says that the maker, the potter, smashed it and made it again another vessel. And that's what Richard Peoples did with me. Like instead of giving up on me, and I was hard to teach, and I argued with him and I fought with him, and I was like, no, and what about this? And I feel like I was a jerk towards him sometimes, and he never gave up on me. So the fact that he did that for me is what transformed me into the man that I am today. All these other people invested, and I honor all of them. But I'm just saying that Bishop Peoples just kind of met me at the time where I needed the most work. And he was willing to put in the work to make me who I am today.
So I realized like at least in my life, some of the best leaders that I had are the ones that challenged me. Not just challenged me, but the ones that when I got upset with them, they just looked at me, smiled, had patience, and poured back into me, even though I was upset, right? And, and then maybe a day or 2 hour, week, I don't know, whatever later, I'm like, dang, they were right. And then, and they're not boastful. They'll just smile and be like, okay, yeah, I'm glad you got it. Let's go to the next thing. So I definitely understand that. So let me ask you this, Rick. And it's not a yes or no question, so don't think it's going to be easy, right?
Yeah. But hold on. Let me just say something about Les Cornwall. Yeah, Les Cornwall has made the greatest impact on my career, like as a technology professional. But Morrison and Peoples had the greatest impact on me as a man. So those are, kind of 2 different things. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's good to clarify that. But so do you believe that you're a servant leader, and why do you believe that?
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, I mean, this is what I ascribe to. I pour my life out as an offering to other people. So a servant leader is dedicated to serve those that are assigned to him or her, right? And that's really like the definition of my life. I get up in the morning, focus on other people, wanting to be a blessing to other people, trying to pour my life out, do today's word. I spend hours every morning from 5 a.m. to about 8:15 a.m. My whole calendar is booked with today's word every day, 5 days a week. And I do that before I do anything else. And I don't get paid to do that. I'm doing it because I'm pouring my life out as an offering for other people. So yeah, I'm serving. I attempt to serve everywhere I go, and I just want to make people better. And I believe that as long as I do that, then God will take care of me. I don't have to worry about me. I'm gonna be fine. I'm just trying to pour into the lives of other people.
Well, like you said, God got to take care of it. But there has to be some type of story, some type of, whether it's recent or back when you started. Like, can you give it, like, I don't want to say an example, but when you realized you was a servant leader after you started, right? What lets you know that you was making an impact? Is
Well, I
there a
believe.
particular instance?
Well, I mean, there are just too many to mention. I guess today's word is obviously one that's obvious, because um, people would just stop me all the time when I was in uniform or not. People stopped me in Korea, Germany, and in the Pentagon, where Rick Pina, oh my God, hey, I get your emails. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, this thing is life changing. Or hey, Rick Pina, oh my God, I watch you now because there's a video version. I watch you every day, or my mother watches you every day. Oh my God, you changed my life. I get so many emails on all of that. Obviously, it's to God be the glory. It's not about me.
Yeah.
But then it's the same thing even as a warrant officer. Like people will walk up to me and they'll be like, "Hey, do you remember you did this for me?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember." But to God be the glory, right? I was a staff sergeant, and then you helped me, or you helped me with my packet, or I was a W1 and you helped me, and I'm like, "No, I don't remember." But that's awesome that I did that. Praise God. And whatever. And so, like, no, there's just too many. My life is a testimony of God's goodness, without question.
And those moments do feel good. I mean, it's kind of funny, like you said, like you're such and such, you're Jason Blair, like, yeah, Chief Blair, like, well, yeah, or whatever. You did this, and I'm like, did I? I'd be like, hey, I remember something about that because in the military, and I can imagine in your post military career is that everything's going so fast. So I'm not saying fire and forget, but you're just knocking stuff out. You're doing what you do, right? And then sometimes that affects people in ways you never will even know, right? And then when you do get some of that feedback, man, it does feel good. It does feel good. Okay, so can you describe where you invested in your team or inspired your team to do something and it exceeded your expectations?
Yeah, I have many examples there, but I'll use one key one. When we were fielding JNN to the Army, I was a JNN project officer for the Army. Les and I helped design the regional hub nodes, and I was doing that from 2004 to 2006. So we were going around. Actually, when we fielded JNN to Third ID, I wound up going to Iraq and spending 3 months with them because there were some issues. They were the first unit to get JNN and all that. So when we got back, there was a need to stand up a training hub in the United States. And there was a lot of discussion on who should run it. And I was in some meetings, and there were some discussions around. They were trying to get a lieutenant colonel to run it. And at the time, I was a CW3. And so they were like, "What about Colonel such and such? I don't know. What about Colonel such and such? I don't know." So they're going through all of this because they were going to get funding and get a bunch of contractors and put some lieutenant colonel over it. And so I said, in one of the meetings, I was just led. I was like, "What about me? Why don't I do it?" And they was like, "What?" And they said, "Well, why don't I do it? I mean, nobody knows more about this than I do." And Colonel Tim Day, shout out to Tim Day. Tim Day was the DCD at the time. He had replaced, well, we went through a few people, but he was the DCD at the time. And he was like, "Yeah, Rick, you could do it." And so Les was like, "Yeah, Rick could do it." And so they gave me that job. I wound up getting 46 contractors, no military, 46 contractors. And they assigned me to the battle lab. And when I got there, I mean, the way God works, as soon as I got to the battle lab.
And the battle lab is?
The battle lab at Fort Gordon. Are you familiar with the NSCT?
I am, but I'm just
for everybody else.
Yeah.
So at Fort Gordon, Georgia, there was a Battle Command Battle Lab at the time. That's what it was called, BCBL, Battle Command Battle Lab. This was 2006, and I got assigned there to then stand up this training hub called the NSCT, and it was a training hub for all the satellite terminals and everybody that was going to do training in the continental United States, CONUS, so the 48 contiguous states of the continental United States, plus Hawaii, plus Alaska. So I get there, and right when I got there, the stars lined up. General Boutel was able to give us funding, and then somebody knocked on the door of the battle lab and said, "Excuse me, we're tearing down this building, and we have to build you a new building." I was like, "Really? Who are you?" It was the NSA. The NSA was coming in to build NSA Georgia. So they said, "Hey, man, we got to knock down this building, and we have to build you a new building." So it was awesome. They built us a new building. I was able to design the whole lab, what it was going to look like, where the antennas were going to go, and all of that. And then I got my team. We wired that. So while the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was building the building, we actually had to wire the NSCT, like our team. And so what our team did over a weekend, and we had troops in NTC and JRCC, so we couldn't really have downtime. So over a weekend, we wired this NSCT. I brought in, my mother made these little sweet empanadas, and she makes these little ones, and she made like 400 of them things. My guys ate them all, and I was there with them, and we just did it over the weekend. And what they did, I let them know that we could do this, and we did it. It was exceptional. And then of course we didn't have downtime. That was an example of a team doing something above and beyond when maybe they were questioning themselves, because we were all questioning why this was not in the contract. Somebody should be doing this for us, and we wound up doing it ourselves.
Probably would have got a little lift from me, a little bit more than empanadas. But no, that's a great story. I got some stories similar, especially when we was downrange in Afghanistan. So how was leading in ministry, different from when you were I can't say when you were in the military, because you was doing both of them. Mm-hmm. So how did you lead one side, and then how did you lead on the other side?
So for me, let's say ministry, marketplace, and the military. So leading in ministry is exceptionally different than the marketplace or the military. And the reason why is because when you lead in the ministry, you lead without leverage. Let me explain. Leading in ministry, for you to be a leader in ministry, you have to be an exceptional leader, because you're leading without leverage. In the military, let's say I'm a staff sergeant and you're a PFC. I tell you what to do. If you say no to me, I got the Uniform Code of Military Justice behind me, right? In corporate America, if you work for me, you're my direct report, and I tell you to do something, you say no to me, I have pink slip authority over you. But in ministry, for me to get 50 men to show up on a Saturday, to get the sanctuary ready for Sunday, and to move some stuff into the parking lot, and to want to do it, and to be happy while they do it, we have zero authority, pink slip authority. Now you can say, oh, well, you have godly authority. Yeah, I got you. I understand that. But what I'm saying is it takes exceptional leadership. Leadership boils down to influence. You have to be a man or woman of influence to be able to get to people to do stuff without any pay. Most of these people are volunteers. So I'm getting people to volunteer their time, their money in a lot of cases, their energy, their effort. They're coming in and they're doing stuff just because I asked them to do it. And they're going way above and beyond. And I have no pink slip authority over them. I have no UCMJ authority over them. I really have no earthly authority over them. All I can do is say, this is what we're doing. And people sign up to do it, and they want to do it because they believe in the anointing that's on a man or a woman. Man, that requires exceptional leadership. It also requires you to walk with a certain level of disposition to where you honor the anointing that's on your life, because if you ever violate it, then people won't follow you.
I mean, I was gonna I'm kind of flabbergasted on that one. Because you're right. Like, I mean, but I think at the same time, even when you're just leading in general, you still have to walk with that type of, I don't want to say, I guess confidence, but when in charge, take charge, right? And and I never thought about what you just mentioned about leverage versus not having any leverage. And at that point, you're going back to the basics, right? You provide motivation, purpose, and direction, and these people want to follow you. Versus in the military or in corporate America or whatever, they have to follow you because of X, right?
Well,
That's their motivation.
I'll give you a real life example.
Yeah.
Private Pina, PFC Pina, Bravo Company,
Yeah.
1st Seagram Battalion. While Captain John Morrison was there and he was awesome, I had to deal with my platoon sergeant. And I got a platoon sergeant that came in. I'm not going to mention her name, but this lady hated me. She was African American, and I had a girlfriend who was African American. And at the time, in 1991, that was not that common. And she didn't like the fact that I was dating a black girl. And so she hated me, and she tried to make my life miserable. And there was nothing I could do about it. She was a sergeant first class, and I had to honor that. And although I did not respect the person, I still had to do everything she said. That would never happen in ministry. You would just leave the church. So there's a distinct difference between leading with leverage and leading without leverage.
Right. So, we're about to shift gears a little bit, right? So tell us about Inspired Solutions Incorporated, where your wife is the CEO, right? And I think you mentioned it a few times. She's a tremendous leader. I haven't had the chance to meet her. I think we'll probably pass each other at a conference or something one day. But tell us about that and your role in there and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my wife is an exceptional leader. She came to this country when she was 20 years old with nothing. And I'm a son of immigrants, but she's an immigrant herself. So I'm a son of immigrants who married an immigrant. And she is definitely living the American dream. We both are. So she started a company in 2015 called Inspired Solutions. And we're a value-added reseller. So we do three things. We resell product. A lot of it is IT hardware and software, but we also do inside plant, outside plant, construction, other things. So we're a minority supplier. We have a bunch of certifications like 8A, service disabled, veteran-owned small business, woman-owned small business, women's business enterprise, minority business enterprise, and a service military spouse certified business enterprise. So we have all these certifications. We wind up being a minority supplier for a lot of projects or a lot of companies. We also do supply chain. So we do some warehousing, kitting, logistics, inventory management, and then we do services. So those are the three things that we do. We're doing it in this space. Basically, I do a lot of what I did at WWT, but we do it obviously as a small business on a much smaller scale. And then I get to partner with folks like a WWT or a Dell or an HPE or Cisco or whatever. And then, be able to sell their products and maybe partner with them, maybe even on services, but then support customers. We support customers in the commercial space. A lot of our customers are commercial, in the federal space, and then in the state and local and education space as well.
Okay, so what about RIP Ministries, right? So how did that get started? And, actually, what is it? What do you do?
Well, I told you in 2007, we started, we incorporate, we were already in ministry, but we needed a vehicle where people wanted to be able to bless us and then get a tax, write-off. So we incorporated, got a 501c3 status, and that really funds our ministry. That funds Today's Word, what I do, all the equipment associated with Today's Word. And there's a lot that goes into Today's Word, and people watch it, and and the whole production capability that funds our school in the Dominican Republic. That funds all the missions trips. We're actually going to the Dominican Republic next week. So that funds everything related to ministry. We're there in the Dominican Republic 4 times a year. We have a school. Like I said, we feed these 220 students and our 17 staff members every day at the school. We also do back to school drives. This year, we gave out 750 backpacks full of school supplies. We also feed prisoners in the DR. We do things in the community. We're committed to ministry from a teaching perspective and from a missions perspective as
well. Look, I follow you on LinkedIn and on Facebook, as I already mentioned, right? So you're doing all these things, right? You and your wife doing great things. Photos everywhere. You're pinging here, you're pinging there. Man, where do you find time to sleep? That's the number one question. Like, when do you have time to rest? Is it on the plane? Is it in the car ride? When do you have time to rest, Rick? Tell me that.
Well, it's all of the above. We attempt to do whatever it is that the Lord has called us to do, and we do it by the grace of God. I like to say that when you embrace God's grace, you're probably going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life, but it won't be you doing it. This is 1 Corinthians 15:10. It's the grace of God through you. I'll give you an example of this just past week, right? So last weekend I was preaching in California. I flew into Los Angeles. I drove down to where the church was, where I was going to be. It was a pastors and leaders conference. I participated all weekend. I preached the gospel, preached the word, poured in there, got on a plane, flew back. And while I'm flying back, my wife was flying to Atlanta for the National Minority Supplier Development Conference. And she got to Atlanta. I got home. So then I'm with the boys. Monday night, we had soccer practice. Well, my son, my 11-year-old, has soccer practice. So obviously I got to do that, right? And then, of course, I'm still doing today's word. But then Tuesday morning, one of our church members who gets today's word, has been getting today's word for years, asked me to pray at her promotion ceremony at the Defense Health Agency. So I had to go to that. Then I had a business meeting at lunch. Then I was at High Tech, the Hispanic IT Executive Council, all Tuesday afternoon. Then I had soccer practice again, right? Then Wednesday I was at High Tech, Wednesday night, a gala, black tie event. I was getting an award, High Tech 100. So I took my two sons with me. And so we got to go to the gala and all that. And then yesterday, I just stayed home because I had to get caught up on some work. So we just do whatever God wants us to do, however God wants us to do it. My wife just got back from Atlanta. We're looking forward. Next weekend, we'll be in New York. Then we're going to the Dominican Republic. When you open up your heart to the grace of God, there's really no limit to what God can do through you, but you have to be yielded to it. And then because I'm not trying to do it in my own power, my own ability, or my own strength, my body doesn't break down. I'm not stressed out. I'm not pulling my hair out. I literally only attempt to do what God wants me to do. And because I'm doing it by the grace of God for his glory, then it becomes a sweatless victory. Now, if I was trying to do all this like as a human, no, I couldn't do it.
So for us mere mortals. But so here's the last question, and I'm going to end this with everybody on this series. So what challenge do you have for upcoming leaders? Meaning, how should leaders challenge themselves to get better, right?
Yeah, so I'll finish with servant leadership. I just challenge you to be a servant leader and to be selfless. Don't worry about yourself. Add value to the world. As long as you're adding value to the world, listen, the compensation will come, the money's going to come, like it'll work itself out. If you are adding value to other people's lives every day, you will become more valuable and you will be compensated accordingly. Too many people are focused on themselves and how much money they can make and all of that without really focusing on the value they can add to this world. If you focus on other people and you make your life about them, you will be taken care of.
Right there. So there you go. Hey, Rick, I appreciate you joining us. And man, this was pretty good. It was insightful. So I hope to have you on. Maybe we'll talk about the nonprofit stuff. I was serious about that because I'm meeting more and more people that's either involved in it or have their own nonprofits. So this is very interesting topic we need to delve into. But thanks for joining us, and I'll see you around.
All right, thanks a lot, Jason. I appreciate it.
Actually, you know what? I did that prematurely. How can people get a hold of you to learn more about your ministry, Inspired Solutions? How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. So on the ministry side, you can go to ricpina.org or ripministries.org. If you go to ricpina.org, it'll resolve to ripministries.org. You'll learn about our ministry. You could donate. You could become a partner. If you want to watch any of the videos, any of those 3,000 episodes, go to youtube.com/Rick Pina or wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Rick Pina or The Grace Life and subscribe to the podcast. And then lastly, for Inspired Solutions, our website is inspired-us.com. Inspired-us.com. And if you have a project that you want us to be involved with, we would love to do that. If there's a ministry opportunity where we could be a blessing, we would love to do that. I'm easy to find.
All right. There you go, people. You know how to reach out. And all right, Rick, I'll see you on the next one. And this is signing off for real this time. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jason.
Yeah. I keep it low key.